to our CommonLit Spooky Stories webinar. My name is Olivia and I'm on the marketing team here at CommonLit. Prior to joining, I was an elementary school teacher in Washington, D.C., so I know exactly how effective CommonLit can be in the classroom. Tonight, we're going to discuss some tips and lesson recommendations to help you celebrate spooky season in your classroom. And as a reminder, I'm recording this. It's just me that's being recorded. You are not being recorded, so don't worry about that. During the webinar, we ask that you use the Q&A feature at the bottom of your screen for questions. Please send us any questions you have throughout the webinar. My team member is here tonight, Adelaide. She will be answering questions in the Q&A only. If you put it in the chat, it may get lost. So make sure to put it in that Q&A section if you do have a question. So before we get started, I know there's different levels of people who may already use CommonLit all the time. Maybe you haven't really implemented it in your classroom. So here's some background and context about our organization. CommonLit is a nonprofit that runs CommonLit.org, a full award-winning digital literacy program. Our program is created by expert teachers, so we know how important it is that our resources are based on research about instructional best practices. Our thousands of lessons come with easy-to-use digital tools and are designed to be flexible for teachers and engaging for students. In addition to our digital library of lessons, we also have a comprehensive ELA curriculum for grades 6 through 12 called CommonLit 360 and benchmark assessments to track student progress over the course of the year. Now, why this webinar? CommonLit loves to help teachers and students celebrate holidays and special times of the year. And we also know how powerful a theme can be to entice students and get them hooked on reading. We want to provide you with great engaging text that you can share with your students to get them hooked and help them practice and learn new reading comprehension, discussion, and writing skills. Here's our agenda for the session today. This will be about half an hour. We're going to start with going over how to assign a lesson, then give some recommendations for great lessons to celebrate spooky season, and end with some suggested next steps. Let's start with going over how to set up a digital class and how to assign lessons on CommonLit. There are a few different ways to set up classes on CommonLit. You can create a class manually with a class code or roster your students with Google Classroom and get that set up for free. If your school is interested in unlocking Canvas, Clever, or ClassLink rostering, they can purchase our School Essentials Pro package, which I'll be sharing more about shortly if you're interested. Now I'm going to hop on the site and quickly show you how to set up your classes on CommonLit so you're ready to get started for this school year. So you are going to go to commonlit.org. And you are going to make sure that you are logged into your teacher account. Gotta log in first. Setting up your free teacher account is easy, and you will have access to it always. And again, all of our lessons on CommonLit are free for teachers and students, and they always will be. So after I logged in, I'm going to go to My Classes, Manage Classes. Then to set up a class, I'm going to click Create a Class. And you'll see there are two different ways you can create your class for free. You can import from Google Classroom, or I can set it up manually. If I create a class manually, it generates a class code that your students can use to join your class, and they don't even need an email for this option, and it's really quick and easy for them to use. For Google Classroom, if your school or district is a Google Classroom district, there are several benefits of using that integration, including single sign-on, the ability to post lessons to your Google Classroom stream, and integration with the Google Classroom gradebook. Personally, my school did not use Google Classroom, so I would set it up manually, but either works. Great. Now let's talk about assigning a lesson. Teachers can assign a lesson by clicking on the yellow Assign button on the left-hand side of the lesson description, then customize the lesson to fit individual student and whole class needs. Let's take a look at how to assign a lesson on CommonLit. I'm going to go to commonlit.org, and on our homepage, I will go to Browse Content, Browse the Library. The first thing I see is this Suspenseful Stories for Spooky Season carousel, which has a bunch of options of really engaging spooky season texts. I want to assign the landlady, so I'm going to click on it and hit the yellow assign button at the top. Now here's where you can customize your lesson so that it fits the needs of your classroom really specifically. I can assign to any period of class that I want. I can assign it to individual students who maybe need extra help, or students who need enrichment activities as well. Or maybe they're missing class for some reason. Whatever the case, I can assign it to the whole class or just to individual students. I can add co-teachers to my assignment so that they're able to see and grade everything as well. I can enable guided reading mode, which is our check for understandings throughout the text. Guided reading mode blurs part of the text so that students read a little bit and then they have to answer a multiple choice question. These questions are checks for understanding. They rely mostly on the text and don't include a lot of inference. And they are really quick ways to see if a student is understanding what's happening in the text. Students have to keep answering the question until they get it right, and you can see how many attempts it took them. Once they get the question right, it goes to the next section and blurs the next part. You can turn this on and off for students. You can even turn it on for individual students who might need that extra support for understanding a passage. You can also choose what kind of assessment questions. On all our CommonLit lessons, we have assessment questions, we have multiple choice and short answer. You can say that they only need to answer the multiple choice or only the short answer questions, or you can assign all of the assessment questions. You choose a start date and a due date, and you can even customize directions. All of our CommonLit library lessons come with an annotation task that is right here. As you read, take notes on how the author characterizes the lady. This annotation task is usually linked to the short answer, and students can use our highlight tool to highlight the text in different colors and take notes as they read. You can also see their annotations and grade them or give them feedback on their annotations as well. If you want them to take notes on something else, or you have special instructions, you can type them in right here. And then you would click assign and your students would get the lesson. Super easy and totally customizable. Now let's talk about recommendations. I had so much fun pulling these spooky season texts for you guys. I did, some of them are creepy. I'm a bit of a scaredy cat, so I was reading them all and kind of shaking in my boots, but some of them are really engaging. The ones for lower grades are less creepy and scary and more of like a Halloween themed season. So let's get into it. The first thing I want to highlight is our horror and suspense text set, which is a one-stop shop for 31 texts for grades 3 through 12 that fall under this genre. These texts are perfect for Halloween time or for lessons on suspense. The text set includes texts by famous authors like Edgar Allan Poe, Ray Bradbury, Roald Dahl, and Shirley Jackson. I'm going to have my colleagues share a link in the chat at the end that will give you an entire like guide of everything that you need, all these links, so you will have access to those. For younger audiences who may not be as into the spooky, creepy horror side of the things, we also have a fantasy text set, which could be a really good theme for this time of year. It's perfect for grades 3 through 5, and these 33 texts dive into imaginary worlds full of magic and mythical creatures. These are ideal for younger audiences looking to get into that Halloween spirit without being scared. So here's my first specific text recommendation, and this is perfect for 3rd through 4th graders. The story is called Grandpa's Magic Hat by Marilyn Helmer. In this magical story, a boy named Luke is skeptical about his grandfather's magical hat. He decides to put on a scarecrow to test its magic. This text has themes of whimsical magic and going on adventures. It incorporates Halloween themes without being scary. My next recommendation is a CommonLit original text. That means it was written for commonlit.org. This is the only place where you will see this text. This one's new this year. It's called The Corn Maze by Chris Bitar. And it's perfect for 3rd to 4th graders. In the story, the narrator is jealous of his little brother, Max, so he tries to scare Max before a family trip to the pumpkin patch. But his plan backfires when the narrator is the one who gets scared. Themes include acting brave, growing up, and experiencing jealousy. Another recommendation for lower grades is this fictional story for grades 4 through 5 called Trail into Darkness by Brad Roby. In the story, a boy named Luke gets separated from his family when they go snowshoeing. Luke begins to panic as he searches for his family. Themes include being able to calm down and problem solve in scary situations. Now, here's where things shift a little as we get to the older grades. This story is called The Veldt by famous author Ray Bradbury, author of Fahrenheit 451. And this is a creepy science fiction short story set in a futuristic house, and it's ideal for students in 7th to 8th grade, although I think students in older grades would also enjoy reading this text, even if it's more geared towards younger audiences. So, the futuristic house cooks, cleans, and entertains the children. One day, the nursery shifts into a jungle. The children, spoiled and often ignored by their parents, and instead are kind of cared for by the house, they become obsessed with death. Eventually, the children trick their parents into entering the room that is now a jungle and lock them in with the lions. You can imagine what happens next. This is a relevant text to examine obsession with technology. Even though it was written 75 years ago, it explores that theme. And also, it's really creepy and perfect for spooky season. I actually read this one and then may or may not have had a nightmare, but again, it's not that scary. I am just a scaredy cat. Now, another one of my favorite spooky season reads that we have on CommonLit is The Landlady. And this is written by Roald Dahl. And in this case, Roald Dahl is not serving up the same warm and fuzzies we associate with the BFG or Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. In fact, he has 2 really spooky stories on our website. In this spooky short story, which is ideal for 8th to 9th graders, a man stumbles upon a bed and breakfast and quickly realizes the old woman who owns the establishment is not who she seems when she sees the names of 2 missing men in her guest book. And this is an incredible story to examine foreshadowing, suspense, and the theme of not trusting strangers. You do have to make some guesses at the end about what happens. So it's really, really good for suspense and foreshadowing, and it's quite creepy. My next recommendation is good for 8th to 9th graders. This is The Monkey's Paw by W.W. Jacobs. In this well-known short story, a man wishes on a charm despite another man's warnings and suffers the consequences. This is another great example of foreshadowing and will also teach students themes of listening to others' advice and wisdom and the potential dangers of greed. Now, my next one is also for 8th to 9th grade students. Seems like this is kind of the sweet spot for spooky stories. But again, this is another one that I think students who are older would also love. This one is called Click Clack the Rattle Bag. And this is a creepy story by Neil Gaiman, who is the author of Coraline. I don't know if you were familiar with that book about a creepy doll, but I do know that I read it when I was a kid and then had to put it outside of my bedroom to fall asleep at night. Again, I'm a scaredy cat. Anyways, in the story, the narrator is watching his girlfriend's brother who asks his babysitter to tell him a bedtime story about Click Clack the Rattle Bag. The narrator is confused and the little brother explains Click Clack the Rattle Bag is a monster that kills you by drinking your whole body, leaving just the bones. The narrator, dubious of the story, continues upstairs with the little boy. I don't know why. I would be like, I'm out. But anyways, When he opens the boys' room, the room is dark and they can only hear the sound of bones rattling. The story ends with the boy pulling the narrator forward. The ending is ambiguous, but the readers can assume the narrator was killed by the click-clacks. This is a great story to teach students about building suspense and using word choice to alter the mood in the story. It's also another great choice for ambiguous endings. My next lesson I want to highlight is the short story, The Most Dangerous Game by Richard Connell. In this story, perfect for 9th to 10th grade students, a hunter falls off a yacht and is rescued by a general living on an island who claims to only hunt the most dangerous game. The hunter soon realizes the most dangerous game is code for humans. When the general convinces the hunter to play his game, stating if the hunter can survive for 3 days while the general hunts him, he can escape the island. This is a great text to examine foreshadowing and irony and discussing the theme of what it means to be civilized. Another recommendation I have for 9th to 10th grade students is a short story by Shirley Jackson, who is best known for her horror novel, The Haunting of Hill House, and also The Lottery, which is one of the most taught short stories ever. I remember learning about this one in 9th grade, and it has stuck with me ever since. Set in a town where the villagers are gathering for their annual lottery, readers are left in the dark about the unknown tradition throughout the story. In the end, readers realize the lottery selects a townsperson to be stoned to death by the others. Themes include the cost of conformity and the dangers of following traditions. This is a great story for discussing how authors develop mood and suspense, as well as helping students understand foreshadowing and irony, as is the case with many of these spooky stories. Another thing I want to highlight is we do have a lot of Edgar Allan Poe available on our website, specifically The Telltale Heart, which is great for 10th to 11th grade students. In this well-known story, a man is being slowly driven mad by the sound of a beating heart in his house after he murders his housemate. The themes include paranoia versus guilt and perception versus reality. This is a great text for introducing students to the impact of having an unreliable narrator. And then we have another text by Edgar Allan Poe, The Cask of Amontillado. This is a short story about revenge. And in this text, Edgar Allan Poe does it again. I remember reading this in my 9th grade short stories unit in high school, and it terrified me. And I still remember it. And when I saw it was on the site, I reread it for the first time since then, and it is still as haunting as it was back then. In the story, a man wanting to get back at his friend for insulting him tricks his friend into going into an underground vault where he traps him forever and essentially buries him alive. Themes include getting revenge, deceiving others, and death and dying. My last specific text recommendation is for classic Halloween spooky story, The Legend of Sleepy Hollow. This entertaining short story follows Ichabod Crane and his encounter with the Headless Horseman. Themes include the dangers of believing in the supernatural, treatment of outsiders, and fear and paranoia. Our library also has 3 excerpts from Frankenstein, a classic Halloween tale about a monster. Themes include examining the impact of loneliness, the effects of power and control, choices and consequences, discriminating based on appearances, and resilience and success. I also want to highlight our book pairings. Along with individual texts, we also have book pairings on our site. Book pairings are sets of text designed to be paired with novel studies in your classroom. We offer a mix of literary and informational text to support novel units by building students' reading comprehension and engagement. These texts are great for spooky season. Hamlet is about avenging the death of his father, and the father comes back as a ghost in the play. So if you're reading Hamlet, there's a book pairing for that. The Crucible is an allegorical drama inspired by the witch hunt trials of 1692 to 93 and is set in the town of Salem, plagued by the hysteria and accusations of witchcraft. Lastly, we have a book pairing for Frankenstein, a classic Halloween monster. Let's explore a book pairing because some of you may not exactly know what that is, and I'll show you where to find them on our site. I'm going to go to commonlit.org and go to Browse Content, browse the library. Then I'll select Book Pairings under Content Type. I'm going to search for the book pairing Frankenstein, And when it comes up, I see that there are 8 texts I can pair with my novel study on Frankenstein. For each text, you'll see a passage summary and information on when and how to pair the text with the book Frankenstein. Notice, for example, the first text you're advised to read before starting Frankenstein, and the second text you're supposed to read after reading Volume 1, Chapter 4. There are tips and discussion questions you can ask your students included in these helpful book pairings as well. We provide a variety of genres for these pairings to expand student knowledge and allow for great discussions. In this Frankenstein book pairing, for example, we provide pairings with a news story, a myth, a poem, a short story, another poem, a skill lesson, drama, and a third poem, a soliloquy from this drama specifically. So lots of different genres that can get students thinking, and perfect to pair with your books. And we have over 100 book pairings, so you can use them not just during spooky season time. Another feature on CommonLit is our supplemental units. We provide 1 to 3 week units that come jam-packed with everything you need. I want to highlight first the 12th grade thematic unit called Something Wicked. There are 11 assignments, 8 reading assignments, 2 vocabulary packets, and a writing assignment aimed to help students answer the essential question, what does it mean to be wicked? For the 5th grade thematic unit about fantasy, students will read 4 texts, complete a graphic organizer, and write a short written response to answer the question, what messages about life does fantasy reveal? Finally, we also have the theme of fear and paranoia. This theme has 112 texts for students grades 3 through 12 that can help students identify and practice working with this theme. Let's explore a thematic unit. In order to find them, I'm going to go to Browse Content, browse the library, and then I'm going to filter by units. I'm going to remove the 360 units so it just is supplemental units, and I'm going to search for Something Wicked. We have over 30 supplemental units you can add based on different themes throughout the school year. You will see this right here. I'm going to click on this, and the unit has everything you need. You can scroll through to browse the 11 assignments. And you can also click on why I teach this unit to understand why teachers and students love this unit. You can click on the supporting resources and guidance for printable resources if you don't want to assign it online. But this is a really, really quick way to add a unit into your classroom that would be great for Halloween season. That comes with all of the texts that you need already in assignments. And even some of the ones we talked about today are in this unit. We also have a lot of options. I just wanted to highlight that explore witchcraft, specifically the Salem witch trials. We have a selection of informational texts on the trial, as well as a book pairing with the play The Crucible to help supplement any spooky unit on witches. So if you want to get some informational text in there about the spooky season in Salem, I'm from a town near Salem, so big fan of these texts on our library. These are informational texts all about what happened in Salem. And we also have some great nonfiction texts that fit into the spooky theme. One new text in our library is called The Spooky Science of Fear, perfect for grades 4 through 5. In this text, the author explains the effects of fear on our brains and bodies. This would be a great text to pair with a short story to kind of give an informational text to go with it. We also have Zombies Are Real, which the author talks about real life zombies. I learned a lot here, including zombie ants, zombie crickets, zombie spiders, zombie cockroaches, fish, rats, fungus, and more. In Why Is It Fun to Be Frightened, Margie Kerr explains why some people enjoy being scared and like scary movies. This is great for high school, secondary age students. It's very similar to The Spooky Science of Fear, which is better for elementary school. And finally, there's an informational text about mummies to teach 8th to 9th graders about this spooky season figure. The other thing I want to mention is we do have some authors with multiple texts on CommonLit who are really great for spooky season. As I said, we have Edgar Allan Poe. So if we Google, or if we search, not Google him, we can see that we have 11 Edgar Allan Poe texts on our library, including some of his most famous ones. We also have Shirley Jackson has 3 different texts here. Specifically, a couple of them are really spooky, but Shirley Jackson. And then Roald Dahl has The Landlady, and Lamb to the Slaughter, which is another really creepy book that story for spooky season. The other ones are not really as spooky, but those two are for sure. And for younger students, we also have some texts by the Brothers Grimm. These 5 texts are mostly fairy tales that might still be good for spooky season. Okay, that was a lot. Now that I've gone over all of the text recommendations, I'm just going to quickly get into some next steps so we can wrap up. We have many more opportunities to support you this year. We have several webinars. If you want an overview of all the resources available on CommonLit, we recommend attending the Getting Started with CommonLit's digital program webinar. If you'd like to dive into our CommonLit 360 curriculum for grades 6 through 12, check out the Introduction to CommonLit 360 webinar. And lastly, if target lessons sparked your interest today, we recommend attending the Best Practices for CommonLit Target Lessons webinar to learn more about using them effectively in your classroom. Like I've mentioned a couple of times during this webinar, CommonLit also offers an affordable support package for schools called School Essentials Pro. Schools that invest in CommonLit see significant acceleration in student reading growth, and we would love to support your team. With School Essentials Pro, your team would unlock professional development trainings, rostering via Canvas, Clever, or ClassLink, benchmark assessments, and school-wide data reports to track student growth over the course of the year. The first element of our School Essentials Pro package is access to professional development options. In addition to live webinars with our team, you would also unlock our professional development portal, which is full of on-demand modules you can use to maximize your literacy instruction with CommonLit. The professional development portal includes more than 20 trainings about best practices for using CommonLit and more than 60 trainings about CommonLit 360. These modules can be done in teams or on your own, and they're designed to fit flexibly into your planning and PD times. Another key element of School Essentials Pro is our assessment series, which is a great resource for tracking student progress over the course of the year. The assessment series is a set of 3 grade level benchmark exams. Each comes with 3 passages and 25 to 35 multiple choice questions that are instantly graded to give you actionable data for planning targeted instruction. You also get growth data over the course of the year to measure student progress. Lastly, to make your lives easier, we also offer several rostering options through School Essentials Pro. You can unlock Canvas, ClassLink, and Clever rostering to make it easy for students to sign up and use our program. We can also support you with the free Google Classroom setup. Our Canvas integration is in particular a really big benefit that makes CommonLit seamless. You can import your Canvas classes to CommonLit, assign CommonLit lessons in Canvas, and send CommonLit grades to your Canvas gradebook. As part of the package, your team will also get a CommonLit account manager to support your team over the course of the school year. So that is it for today.